Objection, this is starting of the same video that I just posted. This is the second part. Objections to pragmatism. Is we know only our experiences, how can we maintain the pragmatic belief in an objective physical world? Are pragmatists correct to hold that the mind and its ideas are only instruments for the pursuit of our interests? And does pragmatism really erase the distinction between the mind and the universe? Reality and logical positivism, learning objectives. One of the most influential of the logical positives was A.J. Ayer. Ayer held that there can only be two kinds of meaningful statements: tautologies, or relations of ideas, and empirical hypothesis, or statements of fact. If a statement is neither one of these, then Ayer held that it was meaningless. As such, logical positivists hold that most metaphysical statements, as well as most ethical, aesthetic, and theological statements, are meaningless, although they do express emotion. Objections to logical positivism. One of the basic objectives to the view of logical positivism is that their criteria of meaning is an unproved assumption. And anti-realism and the here of pragmatism and idealism. An anti-realist view is one that rejects the idea that there is an external reality independent of our own minds. Anti-realists hold that the world we inhabit depends in part on our minds. The opposite of anti-realism is realism, which holds that some realm of objects exists independently of our minds. Proponents of anti-realism. Nelson Goodman argued that we make reality by choosing a particular way of describing, seeing, or drawing boundaries around things, and that humans live in multitude of different worlds. Hilary Putnam makes a similar argument. This view is important to several feminist philosophers. Dale Spender has argued that it explains why the world that women are ordinarily forced to accept is so sexist, since the world used to describe women, and hence make this world, are so demeaning. The views of such anti-realists are sometimes called postmodern, as they reject the modern view that there is only reality. Objections to anti-realism. If all worlds are equally valid, isn't the sexist world as valid as non-sexist ones? And how can the anti-realist claim that sexism is objectively real if there is no objective reality? But maybe the feminist could say that sexism exists in her world. To respond to this change, John Searle argues that even though anti-realists might be right that there are different ways to describing the world, there is still one underlying reality. Searle believes that it is possible to prove that the real world exists. If idealists are correct, claims Searle, then we would only know our own ideas, but we talk about the same things to each other, and so we must be talking about the same external reality. Is freedom real? Determinism. Determinism is the view that every event has prior conditions that cause it, and so each event is at least theoretically predictable. If we know all of its prior conditions and the laws governing such conditions, determinists argue that human actions are also determined in this way. Moreover, determinists hold that humans are therefore not free and responsible. If determinism is true, then punishment would make little sense. Capitalism hold that casual determinism is compatible with freedom. They believe this because they redefine freedom such that a person is free if she is not impeded by external restraints. Compatibilists recognize moral responsibility even though they agree that a person's actions are predetermined. One of the first philosophers to propose a compatibilist view was the British materialist Thomas Hobbes. The American philosopher Walter Stace argued for a similar version of compatibilism. see ourselves as both free and determined. This is the view of Immanuel Kant. Kant suggests that we have two ways of understanding ourselves in the world we live in. We can't think of ourselves as part of the world that we observe through our senses. When we think of ourselves, this is way we are looking at ourselves as one of the world's objects or things, and we feel that objects in this world have to be casually determined. We can also think of ourselves as conscious beings who act in the world. When we think of ourselves in this way, we have to think of ourselves as free. Is time real? Time in human life. Time sometimes seems like the river flows, but its nature is not obvious. Augustine only presents moments as real. Augustine came to the conclusion that since time does not exist for the present instant, is the only thing that is real. The rest does not exist, but there is distinction to be drawn from Augustine from the time from our perspective as flow with past, present, and future, and times as God would view it, as fixed series or line of events consisting in a before and after. The first way of viewing time is the subjective view, a series. The second, the objective view, or B series. Kant time is a mental construct. Kant claimed that time was just a construct of the human mind. He argued that our sense experiences are just a jumble until our minds impose order on them, and that the same is true of our experience of time. According to Kant, space and time are two basic symptoms that the mind uses to organize this flow of changing sensations. Space and time, they are thus mental maps that the mind uses. But when we can imagine time continuing in our minds without any sensations occurring in that time, so the mind constructs time prior to sensations, time then it's just a mental construct. But many scientists have claimed that time exists in objects such time is objective time. Only subjective time is real. Henry Bergson claimed that objective time was just construct and that what we directly experience within ourselves is the flow of time. Bergson calls this experience the institution of duration. Real time of Bergson is subjective time. Chapter summary. Charles S. Peirce. Charles Sanders Peirce was born